Life happens, and not always the way we expect it to. Every single day we face change, stress, and uncertainty. What if you could learn to thrive no matter what life throws your way? Resilience expert Adam Markel and his inspiring guests explore breakthrough strategies to fully embrace change and build the resilience required to become change-proof.
This is our replay episode of George Bryant. George Bryant is a New York Times bestselling author, a top-ranking podcast host, and one of the most highly sought-after digital marketing consultants. Globally, he has helped hundreds of the largest companies and thousands of entrepreneurs by empowering them to deepen their love affair with their customers. Through his relationships beat algorithms approach, George helps co-create transformational breakthroughs that help his clients accomplish their personal and financial goals. The things that we discussed in today's replay episode include having trouble leading from the front because of people that get left behind, how to pivot in a business, and how George became a New York Times bestseller. The 5 A's: awareness, acceptance, action, accountability, and attitude. Enjoy today's replay.
Today is extra special for 2 reasons. One is that I'm hanging out with a dear friend. I've been really blessed to come to know this gentleman, and he's already had a huge impact in my life, and I feel like we're kind of the quintessential soul brothers. Somehow we know each other from a past life or something. But he has a big heart, and I know there's just nothing that is more important to me than to be around other people that are willing to be vulnerable, willing to be real, and have big hearts, and are wanting to open up hearts and help people to elevate themselves in different areas of their life, and are committed to making that happen in their business through conscious business practices, conscious marketing, etc. So in just a moment, I'm going to let him introduce himself. As you guys know, that's my routine. But I wanted to let you in on something. Now, normally we're doing kind of like a Zoom thing where you get to see the video of the actual podcast. But today, we're going to keep you in a little suspense. I can just tell you right now that if you hear the sound of water, it's because we're conducting this podcast from the hot tub. It's sunset and it's a beautiful night out. We're in some 100-degree water, and we'll turn on Facebook and give you a little Facebook Live so you can check that out as well. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce my buddy, George Bryant. George, thank you for joining me and for joining our community.
Thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be here. And I'm going to tell you that giving me the opportunity to introduce myself is dangerous as a podcast host. Most podcast hosts know me and they introduce me because I'll talk all day. But
I know you better than that, brother. Plus, we're sharing a mic, so that's
we are.
Better.
So I'm just super grateful to be here, and thank you for having me. And just so everybody knows, I'll give you my elevator pitch as quick as possible. I'm 33 years old. First and foremost, I'm a bonus dad, a loving father, and an amazing husband to an amazing wife. That comes first. I was an active duty Marine for 12 years. I served in our lovely Marine Corps, a couple combat tours, and I was medically separated, I think, in 2013. And since then, I've made it my passion to really get vulnerable online, connect with people, and help to educate, empower, and inspire as many people as possible online through whatever facet of my journey that I'm on. And so I use social media and the internet as basically my online therapy tool to attract as many people as possible into the movement. So just a little bit about me. I was in a wheelchair for 12 months. I almost lost both my legs in 2005. I had 7 concussions in 3 years. I was bulimic for 12 years and have quite a history that has really catapulted me to be able to connect with people. And so whether it's food or fitness or mindset or business or whatever the medium is, I always tell people that I like to put the heart back in all of it and really connect with all the people on the side of it. So one of the leadership principles I came up with when I was in the Marine Corps, which got me in a lot of trouble with my bosses and a lot of love from my Marines, is that I refuse to lead from the front. And I will never, ever again attempt to lead from the front. And I had a massive problem with it because it means that people get left behind, and I'm never okay with that. So I coined the term that I get to lead from the middle, where you're close enough for me to slow you down and close enough for me to grab you and pick you up, and we go step by step the whole way. And that's where I love being with people. And so after writing a New York Times bestselling cookbook and launching a #4 app in the world and a couple of those, like really superficial achievements, I'm now helping businesses put the heart back in their business and helping them connect with what it means to be in business, to carry their ethos and their vision into the business so people get that they matter in every step of the journey.
And it's a perfect coordination of what we're committed to, because as you know, Pivot is about, our company wants to help people to pivot into a business and a life that they love. And it's a holistic approach to that. So it's mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And the Paleo Kitchen, which is no superficial achievement, brother. It was #4 on the New York Times.
Yeah.
I'll say it if you're not going to say it. And it stayed on the Times list for 22 solid weeks.
Yeah.
And here's the crazy part for all of you out there who I know, most of you are in business for yourself, entrepreneurs. And if you're not, even if you're working in somebody else's business, you can really respect what I'm about to tell you. Those 22 weeks that book stayed on the list, it wasn't the result of any massive marketing budget or marketing spend. In fact, the marketing budget was zero.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you'd like to know more about some of those grassroots, boots on the ground tactics, well, then you're in the right place.
I did. I put the work in for that one. So I'll expand. So I didn't know what a book was at the time, and I didn't know what a publicist was, and I didn't know what any of that was. I was just getting out of the Marine Corps. And here's what's really interesting, and this is one of my dirty little secrets. I wrote a New York Times bestselling cookbook 2 years after I taught myself how to cook. And then I took the photos a year after teaching myself on YouTube how to take food photos. And then I marketed it while teaching myself marketing, which took 9 months of work, but kept me on the New York Times for 22
And
weeks.
George tells me he's not a control freak.
The internet's just made it really easy to support people. I tell everybody, if you have a problem, just go to YouTube.
Yeah.
It solves all the problems in the world. But yeah, so I am super proud of that, and it allowed me to touch over 150,000 lives with my recipes, and I feel like they're just the same recipes that anyone else would make. The only difference is I put love in them, which is why everybody loves the cookbook so much.
Yeah, and the Facebook page, by the way, we're live streaming in a couple of different places, and I don't want to leave our community out, so I'm just going to actually hand this off in a sec, and as promised, let our folks know what we're up to here. But I'll say this, the Facebook page for finding out more about those recipes and really being in that, I think it's a very forward-thinking, conscious community, is Civilized Caveman, right?
Yeah, my Facebook. If you guys wanna come join the Hugs and Bacon family, it's facebook.com/civilized caveman. But you know what I love is we're here to talk about a lot of stuff to do with pivoting, but pretty prevalent one for me. And I'll let you bring into it and bridge it and start the question however you want. But I think
that's kind of you, buddy.
I think I know the impact that this is going to have.
Yeah.
Because it's real.
Well, look, I think there's nobody. This is the one thing we're finding is uniformly the case, that everybody is pivoting in some area of their life. And without maybe calling it a pivot, they've been pivoting the whole way through. So this idea of reinventing, of utilizing change, meaning change is the only constant in the universe. In fact, anything that's not changing is dying. Mm-hmm. So anything that's stagnant is soon to be dead. And I think that's what's really going on in the world, is that there are many, many people who are living lives of quiet desperation, quietly dying, quietly becoming stagnant, slowing down, just not living life on their own terms, not really living fully from their heart, not loving their lives. So I think you've had some very significant pivots, too many to kind of track, in this one podcast. But I think one of the ones that really dropped in pretty deeply for me, and even for my wife Randy, and I know she was talking to you about this earlier, is a pivot with respect to how you think of yourself. A really fundamental, basic. But it's so basic, it's so fundamental that it's actually foundational, meaning everything gets built upon the thing we call self-esteem, the thing that we would refer to as our worthiness, how we view ourselves. And I know that's been a significant body of work for you, in terms of your own self-awareness. So would you shed some light on that for us? I
will, for sure. And I love this topic. Every opportunity I have to talk about it, I run towards it, like be a heat-seeking missile for what you fear most, right? Because that's where the growth happens. Yeah. And for me, I just want to presence everybody. We're going to dive into some worthiness for me. And one of the distinctions that it took me a long time to understand is that the conversation never goes away. The conversation never goes away. And I told one of my mentors this, is that I don't believe that people change. I believe that people become conscious to choose. And worthiness was massive for me. My whole childhood, I never felt like I was good enough. I was neglected for a good majority of my life. Drugs, alcohol, physical and sexual abuse. And so my story and my core wound growing up is that I wasn't good enough. And from the surface, it looks like it was an amazing journey, because out of that, I had the most horrendous case of Napoleon syndrome, and I had to win at everything. So I did. I was the best at boot camp when I joined the Marine Corps. I was an honor graduate. I was meritorious promoted. I tied world records for standing box jumps after they wanted to amputate my legs. I was a 22-week New York Times bestseller, wrote a #4 app. And what was really, really interesting is I was just pursuing a deep, dark, empty hole that had no bottom, because it was all rooted out of insecurity. And I will say that the work really, really started when I met my amazing wife, who started shedding light to me and allowing me to see that space was created that I could exist as who I was, and that was my value.
So pause there for a moment. I want people to catch up to this. So no matter all of the accomplishments, the quote, the medals, the honors, all of those kind of things that people strive for, they still didn't make you feel great about yourself, or at least make you feel whole and complete. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, never. They actually made the whole greater. They made the whole feel deeper and darker and more daunting for me.
Explain that.
I will. So what ended up happening is I ended up creating the perfect storm of failure, is what I should call it as. Is I was just consistently setting myself up to fail. As I achieved another great milestone and I felt unfulfilled, the bar got raised, and then the bar got raised, and it was almost like an addiction. And it was an addiction to being the best, because I was just seeking this value or this meaning that I was chasing that didn't really exist.
Outside of yourself.
Outside of myself, which didn't really exist, and it never was going to. But at the time, I didn't recognize that. So,
This is a biggie right here, George, because I can't tell you how many people that I've spoken to, and they say, yeah, I get it. But just, if I make $1 million, or if I have a successful business, or I get a New York Times bestseller, like, I want to discover what that what that's like, because they think somehow that will be the solution. And not having had that, they think, well, it's easy for you to say it since you've had it.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. And the grass is always greener on the other side, until you realize it's not grass. It's like razor blades. Right? Like that's really the best way to put it. And what ended up happening is I ended up exhausting myself so much that I ended up with adrenal fatigue, massive depression. It triggered most of my PTSD, and I ended up back in the hospital.
Yeah.
And I ended up in a hospital bed in a psychiatric ward for 4 days over Thanksgiving, when I should have been with my family, but I was so enrolled in my beliefs that I wasn't willing to let go of them. Yeah. And no one could show me another way, because I was so committed to finding value, and I had set the expectations so high of myself that the only option was a crash. And you and I referenced this earlier. I looked at it as balance. And balance always leads to a very long fall to the bottom if you fall out of balance, right? So harmony is a better word. And so that crash, and that for me was another hospital visit, was a massive, massive awakening for me.
Yeah.
And what it forced me to do really was disconnect. I had no phone. I had no contact. I didn't have the people I loved around me. They could only visit. And it was just me, myself, my thoughts, and a lot of blank walls. And I think it was one of the first times in a long time that I had to slow down, and I had to figure out who I was, because there was nothing else. There was no TV. There was nothing but papers, pens, books in my brain. And it was a long, hard journey for me. Those 4 days felt like 40. And it was self-discovery, and I broke it down into an acronym. I learned to help people with this, because after reverse engineering what I went through, I figured out that there were 5 phases to it for me. And I call it the 5 A's. And so the first A was awareness. Aware that I was seeking, chasing, or just being aware of the beliefs that I had, which was causing me to pursue something outside of myself. And then the second A was acceptance. And I tell people now that in order to move forward, you have to accept where you are, because it's the only way to create a starting line. And so when you accept, you basically pinpoint your GPS coordinate. You're like, this is where I am, and now I know which direction I can go. And so the third A was action. And that action was taking an action as far away from the self-deprecating behavior or chasing some, external thing of emptiness. So I focused a lot on self-love, on self-reflection. I would do things like write on my mirror with a Sharpie, I am worthy, I am loved, and sticky notes on my desk, the background of my phone. Like, I went there. And then the fourth A was accountability. And it was getting it out of my own head and putting it into the universe and having someone that could support me. Whether it was hey, did you write a positive affirmation about yourself today? Or did you practice this today? Or are you working towards this today? And then that's what really got me out. And then it was after about 6 months, I realized that was still setting me up to fail, because I was allowing the last step to be accountability, which was putting it on somebody else for my success. It always ended with somebody else. And so then I added the fifth A, which is attitude for gratitude. So the full circle is when I have a breakthrough, or I have a moment, or I have a moment of even clarity of like, I am who I am in this moment. I'm perfect. I'm whole. I'm complete. And then I have my accountability part of me like, good job. I then root it in something I'm grateful for in that moment. I create like a physical memory, or I do something or write something down to say, hey, I'm here. I'm grateful for this. It's come full circle and it was mine. And so those are the 5 A's that I've used to basically overcome most of the challenges that I faced. And I've been able to basically put words to what it was like to be in that room for 4 days with no contact and go through these cycles of 20 plus years of my life. And it really boiled down to those 5 things.
Thank you for both going there and being vulnerable. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are listening to this and even watching this that are having challenges and have been there and understand that money doesn't solve your worthiness issue. This is deep inner work that we all have to do. It's, I wish it was easier than it truly is, but the fact is that it's vigilance. It's a lifelong pursuit.
And it's rewarding.
Well, it's rewarding when you're consciously working on it. Mm-hmm. And it's frustrating when you're unaware, let's say, unconscious, right? So, yeah, you started this, and I loved it because in addition to giving those 5 A's, which I think everybody's going to remember and everybody can use. Yep. So you just put them to use in your own way, however that works for you. But what started this all was your discussion of beliefs and letting go, which happens to just ironically be the first 2 steps in the pivot process, right? Yep. Is to be looking at your true beliefs and where is it actually that there are things that you believe that you could choose to unbelieve? Where are the things that you believe that are limiting you that you could simply let go of? And when you can't let go, when you're so tied into your way of thinking and your way of being, and even your, we could call it your ego. It's kind of a negative way to look at it, but truthfully, it's a survival mechanism. Mm-hmm. And I think for you and for me and for a lot of folks that when we're wanting to control situations, when we're wanting to have it our way, it's strictly because it's what brings us a feeling of security. It's where safety resides, right? And so, that creates some great blind spots, as we know. So I really appreciate you identifying and sharing those at least a few of those blind spots with our folks.
Yeah, and for me, it was the illusion of safety, right? Like what I really, really learned was that when I was comfortable, I had the perfect recipe being created for a disaster. And then the longer I spent comfortable, the bigger the impact of that disaster was for me. And it took me a long time to realize that, and I really became present to that the more I'm willing to go there, whether it's the hard conversation or...
Comfort is a status quo. That's what it is. You're buying into what ultimately leads to that stagnation, to that mediocrity. And ultimately, our hearts and our souls will only put up with that shrinking, that dying, for so long before we either sort of check out as in become a member of that herd of people that are walking around like zombies, or you're so upset, you're so in pain that you have to do something about it. And that's really where I think our communities cross over, because the people who are spending the time to sit on and watch you and I hanging out in a hot tub, or folks that are listening to this podcast right now, knowing that we're sitting in a hot tub.
Yeah, right?
And maybe they're stuck in traffic, or maybe they're out in their backyard looking at the sunset, meditating, or something else. But they're just not willing to stand for status quo. They're not willing to just endure pain and endure that comfort, because comfort is indicative of so much of what really is within our control to change. That is so within our control because everything that we have at the moment that's a part of our comfort zone is something we've settled for. We've settled for and accepted, tolerated everything in our life at this moment. Yeah. So you want to put yourself in a disruptive mode on purpose as opposed to by default. That's why we're so keen to talk about how is it that you actually design build your life, or design build your marketing funnels, which I know is one of these other areas of your great fascination and expertise and all that kind of thing. But it's design side versus waiting somehow for life to deliver you your sentence.
It's just being in like consistent pursuit of greatness, of like your greatness and discovery and awareness. And, you know, I love tangible stuff for people because tangible is what works for me. And I'm going to give an example from today. So there's a lot of depth to my story and a lot of my pivots, from the sexual abuse to the physical abuse to everything else. And I think given those 5 A's and everything else I've been through, there's one recurring theme that supports me more than anything else. And it's going there the moment it comes in my head. And what I mean by that is my brain, I'm sure as of most people's, is like the master manipulator in convincing me to avoid certain things. Whether it's the hard conversation, whether it's the action, whether it's I throw something in the trash barrel and it misses and it lands on the floor. Do I pick it up and throw it out, or do I just leave it because I know I'll get it later, right? It's always going there in the 5 seconds. And today specifically, I want to let everybody know one of the biggest breakthroughs for me was when I became public about my sexual abuse, and that created a lot of ownership for me everywhere in my life. And so I'd never told anyone but my wife about my sexual abuse, and I decided to go on a stage in front of 400 people that I'd never spoken to and open with that. So my butthole was clenched really tightly, and I was afraid everybody was going to run out. But I learned a very valuable lesson in that moment. And the lesson is that my brain in survival mode will always make the situation seem way worse than it could ever possibly be. And the faster I get it out of my head and into the open, the more free that I am. And so today I used it with Adam specifically. For those of you listening, Adam's a mentor of mine, and I look up to him from speaking and everything he has in the world. And we were talking about a talk I just gave. And I was going through my process and wondering why I was afraid for feedback and wondering what it was. And I looked right at Adam and I started crying and I said, I don't want your feedback because I feel like you're a father figure to me and I don't want to feel not good enough and judged. And I went there immediately upon feeling that. And what that did for me was it created a space of vulnerability, authenticity, and freedom because it was no longer in my head. I wasn't worried about what Adam was going to say or what he was going to do or if he was going to judge me. I got it out of my head, which created possibility for me, which in the end created a deeper connection, strengthens our relationship. Our relationship is built on authenticity and trust because we know that in any moment we can just be authentic with each other and it's a safe space. And so that's a perfect example of like realizing that this work happens vigilantly every single day. And the more that we practice it and the more that we run towards it, the greater we become at, number one, being aware of it, number two, accepting it, and then number three, taking action towards it to create a different result. And so I just thought the timing of it is serendipitous that literally today, and Adam, I don't think expected it based on his face when I said it, but it's a daily practice. And more than anything, it's a daily practice.
George, thank you for bringing that back up, actually, because like you said, it's so important to be able to, what I like to refer to as getting leverage over yourself, getting leverage over the roommate in your head, the little voice in your head, you know, the little you, the mini me, that kind of thing. And so I gave you, just a couple of weeks ago, I laid something on you, and I'm going to share it with our folks now too. And I agree with you. It's awareness is the first step in change. Understanding what it is, meaning and I love what you say about acceptance, right? Accepting where you are as the first pinpoint, the GPS, the waypoint of where you're starting from, understanding that, and then being able to do something to actually change it, meaning the reprogramming process. So the tool that I shared with George that's worked for me and I'm going to share with you guys is that you can call out what we might refer to as your dirty little secret.
Yep.
All right? Because then it's like giving yourself permission to simply call out whatever it is, that the thing that you're trying to hide from other people, the place where you're in essence, trying to keep up your facade, keep up the charade. And the charade, I think, on some level, I think it's our instinct. It's a survival instinct to want to do that. And what it does when you challenge it and you call it out, you put it out into the, literally call it out loud into the ether, is that you take the emotional charge off of it. You neutralize it, which enables you to be more, you could call it balanced, or you could call it more in harmony, emotionally in harmony. And that is a massive, massive benefit to being able to challenge the actions you take or don't take by be able to do different things, see different things differently. And it's very expansive. So final question for you is just to ask you, in terms of the pivots that you're doing, you're engaged in all the time, is there a ritual or a practice that supports you in being able to utilize the change that's around, and for you to be able to challenge that little voice in your head, or challenge the little you that wants to keep you feeling uncertain or insecure or worrying about what people think about you, or whether people would even like you based on what you say or do. So what's a ritual that you can share with our folks?
Yeah, I love that question, and I'm glad that you call it rituals. And here's what's interesting. I like to challenge myself to keep my mindset where it belongs, which is uncomfortable most of the time. And so I hate being cold. I despise being cold with a passion. And for the last 3 months, I've been taking an ice bath every single day, to the point where now where I travel and I'm like up in Toronto with business, the lake is 34 degrees Fahrenheit and people have winter jackets on, and I go swimming in the lake. And it's really interesting for me though, and I'm going to explain why this ritual supports me so much. It's because there's some rituals that we have, like going to the gym or eating healthy, that become monotonous and they just become a pattern. I don't know if I will ever be comfortable consciously lowering myself in a bucket of ice. And so every moment before I do it, I get so uncomfortable and I doubt myself and I don't want to be cold again. And I have like this entire process that really feels like an eternity, but it's probably like 3 seconds, where I have to commit to getting in. And it has not lessened at all. The more I do, the same it's there. Now the ice doesn't hurt as bad and it's not as cold, but the moment of getting in is just as uncomfortable now as it was on day one. And so I found that this is the most supportive thing that I have, because it is something that makes me uncomfortable. It's beneficial from a health standpoint. And it every day starts my day with pushing the envelope. And it creates like, the eating the frog thing or whatever, but it just creates so much possibility for the rest of my day. And I find validation when I'm like, I took a 7-minute ice bath this morning. And they're like, well, you can really do anything because you're nuts. I'm like, maybe, or I'm just committed. But it's my number one ritual, and it sets my day from like a clear perspective, because when you're cold and you just have to breathe, all you can focus on is breathing. It gets my commitment going. It has the health benefits. It increases circulation, makes my mitochondria more receptive. Like, there's all that stuff. But it allows me to go there every day before I go there in my day. Yeah, that's what I mean to say.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that would be it for me, and it carries over everywhere. And so for an applicable standpoint for everybody, when it comes into a relationship in my marriage or business or working with Adam or a travel or a long meeting day, I can look at all of that as just another ice bath. And I'm like, I'm just going to get in the ice bath. And it may be uncomfortable in the first moment, but it creates momentum, which you talk a lot about, and it constantly creates me in a pivot. So I feel like it really sets the tone for me throughout the day to just easily adjust.
Yeah. What it means to me, and I'm sure there's some people that are watching and listening to this that are thinking, yeah, I'm going to do that. Yeah, I'm going to do that. And then some people that are going, there's no way in hell I'm going to do that. That's the last fucking thing in the world I'm going to do.
And those are the Adams in the world.
No, listen, brother.
No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, but the truth is, whether you're going to do it or you're not going to do it, it's, I think, a question of you're challenging your comfort.
Yep.
And as we said, comfort's a bit overrated, at least among the people that we're hanging around with, right?
Yep.
So being uncomfortable, however that looks for you, could be that your discomfort is actually to be quiet. I can't tell you how many people I know who just to be still, just to shut up, just to stop, make their mind still, or to sit still is very uncomfortable. So yeah, can you throw yourself in an ice bucket? You can. Can you also call up a long-lost person in your life and tell them you're sorry, or tell them you forgive them, or tell them you love them? Yeah. Would that make a lot of people uncomfortable? Yes. So I think what's great is that every day you start your day with something that makes you uncomfortable, that isn't easy, and that's setting a tone. And so that's a powerful ritual. And
You know what
I
you
really
could do?
appreciate you sharing that
No,
with
and I
us.
love it, and I'm going to challenge myself because that reminded me. I've had it on my docket. I've wanted to write a letter every day to somebody, like an actual handwritten letter.
A bona fide letter.
Like a bona fide letter that has an address on it and a stamp, and it goes by the postman and it gets delivered to their door. And it's a pure, like, I miss you, I haven't talked to you, I apologize, I'd love to be in contact, like, let's go there. And so I think I'm going to commit to doing, I'm going to start one a week. And I'm going to start writing a letter to build a bridge to a relationship that I've let go, or someone that would like to hear from me, or even a relative that I'm not in close contact with. And I'm going to bridge the digital gap, and I'm going to pivot into a physical relationship, which is going to take time, and that's the best gift that we can give. So that just reminded me of that. So I'm going to challenge everybody
Rock on, brother.
to write a letter. I'm going to challenge you to pivot, but I want you to start by not sending an email or not calling. I want you to get a pen, a paper. If you can find the post office, just in case you forgot where it is, go buy some stamps.
Lick a stamp.
Seal it. If you want to go high school style, you can spray cologne on it,
Yeah.
and then you can send it in the mail. And I want everybody to do that.
Yeah. Kiss it on the way out, too.
Yeah,
Why
there we
not?
go. XO on the
Swack
seal,
it, swack
everything.
it. All right, well, this is amazing, as always, George. I'm so thrilled that we get to hang out in the hot tub. We get to podcast in the hot tub. This is new ground for us.
Yeah.
Maybe
New ground for me, too.
Yeah. Way cool. Yeah, we'll be talking about this in the future.
Yep.
For you guys, I would love it, of course, as always. If you have some comments, leave your comments. If you'd love to join us, we've got a great new community that's really just taking us, I don't want to say by surprise, but we've just been really pleasantly enjoying what's going on, the authenticity, the vulnerability, and the support that's happening in the Start My Pivot community on Facebook. So Start My Pivot community on Facebook. We'd love to have you guys join us. And as always, my heart to yours. Whatever you're doing in your life, I hope you love it. I hope you love life. And if you don't, then wake up tomorrow. You get to start again. Put your feet on the floor. Of course, 3 steps. Wake up. Be grateful for the fact that you are, in fact, awake on a literal level, on a figurative level, that you're awake, because there are people that at that moment that you're taking your first conscious breath are taking their last breath. So be in gratitude, stand up and say, I love my life. And if you don't currently love your life, what a perfect place to create a powerful intention and begin to work on that. Because it is our belief that the love that you give yourself is the love that you give the world. The day that you give yourself is the day that you offer to the world.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We hope you now have even more tools and greater insights to build resilience and become change-proof. Help us inspire others by sharing this episode and leaving your comments over at adammarkell.com/podcast. For more resilience tips and strategies, including support for building change-proof teams, visit adammarkell.com/become change-proof.